want us to keep talking? Or... Okay. All right. We're working here. Let's just run these 8 principles very quickly by us. Realize that I am not God. I admit I am powerless to control my tendency to do the wrong thing and that my life is unmanageable. And happy are those who know they are spiritually poor. The E, earnestly believe that God exists, that I matter to him, and that he has the power to help me recover. Happy are those that mourn, for they shall be comforted. C, consciously choose to commit all my life and will to Christ's care and control. Happy are the meek. Openly examine and confess my faults to myself, to God, and to someone I trust. And happy are the pure at heart. Voluntarily submit to every change God wants to make in my life and humbly ask him to remove my character defects. Happy are those whose greatest desire is to do what God requires. Evaluate all my relationships, offer forgiveness to those who have hurt me, and make amends for any harm I've done to others, except when to do so would harm them or others. And happy are the merciful, happy are the peacemakers. Reserve a daily time with God for self-examination, Bible reading and prayer in order to know God and his will for my life and gain the power to follow his will. And the last one, yield myself to God to be used to bring this good news to others, both by my example and by my words. Happy are those who are persecuted because they do what God requires. Not that long ago, that Coke can there would simply be thought of as rubbish, as useless, having no value. These days, of course, we've moved on. Now things can be recycled. It can be turned into something new and shiny and can be used again. And in many ways, what we would want to talk about tonight is recycling. Recycling hurts, hang-ups, and habits. Recycling pain by allowing God's light to shine on it. The fire, God's fire, to melt down these hurts and hang-ups and habits so they can be used in a positive way. They can be recycled to show others how we've worked our way through these steps, through these principles, along with our higher power, Jesus, to come through the darkness into God's freedom and light. So let's just remind ourselves of that principle and the step that goes with it. The principle we've just read, principle 8, yield myself to God to be used to bring this good news to others, both by my example and my words. And step 12 says, having had a spiritual experience as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, just to remind us where we were last week. When I spoke last week, we were talking in the first part of step 12 with this word give, and this particular acronym, G-I-V-E. And the G, we remind ourselves really that everything is from him. We should recognize that right from the very beginning, that we are powerless in our own strength. Everything comes from him. It's God first, not us. The I reminds us that the road to recovery, our Christian journey, is not to be walked alone. There's no such thing as this solo journey. We're in this together. It's an individual journey that we walk. Nobody's going to carry us through it, but we walk it with and alongside others. The V, our victories. The victories that we share with others. The growth that we make in following these steps are there not only to aid us, but to encourage others. And what I did say last week, and I want to spend a few moments on this, is it's not the big stuff either. Not just the big stuff. That's one of the ways that sometimes we seem to be programmed, that we see victories as just big, exciting things, dramatic things. Now, any football supporter will tell you that it's really nice when your team wins 5-0, 6-0. They thrash the opposition. That's a big victory. You can get excited about that. But sometimes they just sneak through it 1-0. It's not always these big victories. But I tell you what, if your team wins every game next season 1-0, you will end up as champions. No question. Now, sometimes when we're asked to share victories, we scratch our heads. It's the same thing that sometimes happens when we ask people, well, what has God done in your life? And they, well, I'm not sure. We're looking, if you like, because we're programmed to look for something big and amazing. But I want to share a little victory, because it's something that's happened this particular week. And it goes back to this time last week. Last week, when we were doing this particular session, we stopped after at church, me, Liz, and Christine, stopped afterwards for the Zoom meeting. And that went on, obviously, to 9 o'clock. And I'd forgotten something. I'd made a mistake because I hadn't prepared, because we have ducks and chickens, and they need to be put in. Now, most of them are locked up anyway, but there are 3 geriatric chickens that have freedom to wander around, and they just go in themselves when it's dark. But I had forgotten to take that into the account. And sometimes it's happened in the past, and we've got away with it. The door's been left open in the dark, and we've been lucky. Last week we weren't. The door was open, it was pitch dark, fox comes along, gets in and kills the 3 of them. 2 bodies, and the 3rd one's been dragged off somewhere. Now that doesn't sound like much of a victory, and of course that isn't. But it's not appropriate to look at God and say, oh, hang on, God, why did you allow this to happen? No, it was my mistake, my lack of planning, my carelessness. And sometimes when we make mistakes, the consequences don't just fall on us, they fall on other people, or in this case, other chickens. So where's the victory in this? Well, Liz put the thing out on Facebook, the death of these chickens, and it opened a floodgate to a couple of dozen, it seems, of people firing back and saying how sorry they felt and so on. And that was nice. Nice to know that people are out there and they concern themselves about you. But it was in the afternoon of that Friday, knock on the door, open the door, and there's this lovely couple who went to the previous church that we went to. Nigel and Sus, 2 of the nicest people we know, but we kind of lost touch with them in many ways. It can happen when you go to a different church. But they were standing there with 2 bunches of flowers and said, well, we thought you'd be feeling really upset, and so we brought these. And I thought that was lovely. So we invited them in. We went outside and had a socially distanced cup of tea and a 20-minute catch-up and so on. And the victory for me is that in the midst of all this, in the midst of this making mistakes, doing things wrong, God puts it on the heart of 2 people who we're not even walking the journey with on a day-to-day basis at a different church, haven't seen for some time. Puts it on their heart to think, well, I need to go out and do something to make somebody feel better. It's an example, if you like, of what we've got up there on the screen on E. The examples. The E stands for the examples of our actions. It's very easy sometimes simply to talk the talk and say, yeah, I'll pray for you, and so on. But Nigel and Sus actually felt they needed to do something practical. And although it's not a big victory, in the sense I'm not going to write a book about it, or stand up here and say this most amazing thing has happened, it's just so wonderful that there are people who God prompts just to get alongside you and care, because that's within their heart. Nothing in it for them, but they pass on what God has placed in them. And that, to me, is a victory. It doesn't bring the chickens back, but that's a victory. Because society sometimes says that pain, that hurts and hang-ups are useless. And what's more, people in pain, people with hurts and hang-ups are useless. And it writes them off. Starving people, we don't want to see that. Hurting people, don't want to see that. Sometimes, I'll throw a bit of money at it at a comic relief day or something like that to make my conscience feel better. But I really don't want to. I want to focus on the good stuff. I don't want to focus on the hurts and the pain. And society sometimes says that people with these hurts, hang-ups, are not of any value. One of the best poets that I used to teach at sort of A-level is a guy called Philip Larkin. He doesn't write nature poetry, he just writes about life, but he's an atheist. So he sees all the problems in life, but he doesn't see the solution. And he once wrote the line that says this: how we live measures our own nature. In other words, what you achieve in life represents what you're worth. Now that's a hard message, but it's one that society believes in. What you achieve in life measures what you're worth. So people will strut around with their flash cars and their fancy holidays and their designer clothes and their posh jobs with titles and say, I've made it. I am successful. And if you haven't made it and your life is a bit of a wreck and you've got all this stuff in your life, well, it's really your fault. It's because you deserve it. And that's society's message. Fortunately, it isn't God's message. God does not write our hurts, our hang-ups off and put them onto us and say, because you're valueless. It's the old one, isn't it? About the £20 note. When it comes off the press, it's worth £20 and it's beautiful and new. You can crumple it up, you can put it in the mud, you can jump up and down on it. It's all creased, pick it out of the mud, open it up, and it looks rubbish, but what's its value? Well, £20. It may not look the business, but its value is nothing to do with what it looks like on the outside. Its value is written into it and underwritten by the Bank of England, and our value is underwritten by our higher power, by God. Our value is the life of his Son. So it's the fact that we can recycle our hurts and hang-ups and use them to help other people and to bring them through. So while society says no, what we want to finish here on is saying yes. And that's our acrostic for tonight. The why is the principle that we put up a little while ago. Yield myself to God, to be used to bring this good news to others, both by my example and my words. Give God the freedom to use us just as he sees fit. Present him with everything we have. Time, talents, hold loosely to what we have. That's what it's about. Yield in everything. The blessing is that some of the things that we've got within us, we don't even believe are of any value, but God is the God of multiplication. You saw that when he took some loaves and fish from a kid, his fish lunch, and multiplied it to feed 5,000 plus people. God can take the little stuff within you and multiply it. Just that little word, Nigel and Suss's little gesture last Friday, now passed on. Who knows whether anybody hears that and a penny drops and anybody is sitting there now or later when they pick up this message and says, yeah, do you know, I kind of get that. It's not about doing a big thing. It's doing the right thing. Galatians 6:1-2 says this: if someone is overcome by some sin, humbly help him back into the right path, remembering that the next time it might be you who is in the wrong. Share each other's troubles and problems, and so obey our Lord's commands. The E. Example is what is important. Your walk needs to match your talk. James 1:22, it's up there, says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. We must be doers of the word. It's very easy to talk it, but it's the walk that matters. People will take your example far more seriously than they take your advice. People will listen to advice all day long, but in the end, they're waiting for somebody to say what they want to hear. Paul Simon wrote it in a song called The Boxer, when he said, all lies and jest till a man hears what he wants to hear, then disregards the rest. So if we want someone to see what Christ will do for them, good idea is to let them see what Christ has done for you. So tonight, ask yourself these questions. You could fit into the hubs, if you like, or into the Zoom meetings, or just people questioning themselves. Does my lifestyle really reflect what I believe? Does it show the patterns of the world instead? Pride, lust. Am I doing stuff and thinking, hey, look at what I'm doing? Am I materialistic? Do I value the things that I have rather than God? What do I talk about? The Bible does say, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So what is inside you will come out in what you're interested in how you talk. What do you talk about? What excites you? God? Your recovery? Or your football team? Or your mobile phone? Are we different from people around us? Do people see something in us? Or do people say, yeah, you may be a Christian, but I don't see you as any different from anybody else? Or do our lives reflect the love, humility, and the service of Christ? Now, don't get me wrong. We don't have to be perfect before our life or our journey can be an example to others. Hence the value of recognizing victories. The key to it is not something grand, not pretending to be something that we're not, but by honesty. Honesty with the problems that we experience, the hurts that we have, the things that we've struggled with, that we can now say, yeah, I start to see a change in me. I'm dealing with it differently. I'm not there yet, but I'm dealing with it because I've yielded myself to my higher power. And that will come out in the examples within my life. Yes, serve others as Jesus Christ did. See, service is important. John 13, 14 to 15. I think I've got that one in front of me so I can look this way. And since I, the Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. Now, when Jesus washed his disciples' feet, that was taking on the role of the lowest servant, because that was not a job that anybody other than the lowest servant would do. Washing feet is not nice news at the best of time, but when they've been barefoot and walking around in the dust, in the dirt, and the donkey poo, this was not the sort of thing that you would want to do. You gave it to the lowest of the servants, but Jesus washed his disciples' feet as a gesture that said, I will serve you like the lowest. Are we prepared to pick up the same sort of towel, and not literally to wash people's feet, but to serve them? Service is important. Like in tennis, a person who serves well very seldom loses long term. Service is important. So how can you serve? What are ways in which you can serve? Well, many ways, of course. Service in the things that you do, in the kind stuff that you do, like Nigel and Sus last week. But in far as this recovery stuff goes, how about this? Be an accountability partner. That's nothing dramatic. It's not a grand thing to do. It's simply getting alongside somebody in recovery and saying, well, okay, I'll partner with you. I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with you so that when you struggle, I can lift you up. And when I struggle, you can lift me up. And when they're sitting there thinking, I don't want to go to church this week, I'm too tired, or I can't be bothered to go to the meeting, say, no, come on, it's important that we do this. Let's go together. Because the next week, it may be you who's struggling with it. Just somebody to stand alongside and be partner with. Or you could be a sponsor. Now, a sponsor's a bit grander. It's somebody who's been through the journey, who's further on in the journey, who's done the steps, who's done this program, and so on. But again, it isn't somebody who's special. People who are sponsors don't tend to have to advertise the fact. You don't have to say, hey, come on me, I'm available for sponsorship. People will see something in you. That's normally the way when we talk to people in recovery, how they acquire sponsors. They see something in somebody else. And they say, I've watched you at meetings, I've watched you in church, and I like what I see. Can you help me? It's a responsibility. Get the opportunity, why not? Help at recovery meetings. Why not? At the moment, we are kind of very restricted in what we can do at meetings, doing this online rather than talking to people face to face. But it's coming to a point where very soon we're looking at doing both. We're looking to have people come in and do this live, whilst at the same time running this online so we can reach people who can't come. And when that happens, we need help. You need people who are greeters. Not an exciting job, that. It's not one that's going to get you kind of great applause. But we need people standing on the door. With this socially distanced stuff, you need people to do this exciting job of standing at the door and telling people how to follow the one-way system. And telling them that the toilet's occupied, so just wait there. But somebody's going to do it. Not an exciting job, but it's service. When we get round to it, doing the refreshments. Doing the refreshments. It's easy enough to drink the coffee, but sometimes somebody's got to make it or bring it. Social events. Everybody likes social events when we're allowed to do them again. Barbecues. Great to turn up a barbecue and eat the beef burgers. A little bit less exciting to cook them and even less exciting to wash up after and clear up. But these are things that people need to do. And we're looking for people to do. Invite someone to church. Invite someone to a recovery meeting. You don't know what will happen when they say yes to that invitation. They may not, but when they do, who knows where that's taken them? Who knows when we pass something on, some little bit of service, it connects with somebody's thinking and they remember that. See, there are various people in lives, aren't there, who are givers and takers. Now, the people who are takers eat well. The people who are givers tend to sleep well. So be a giver. Do what you can with what you have where you are. That's basically the essence of step 12, if you think about it. Do what you can with what you have wherever you are. And so effectively we come to the end of these 12 steps. Now we have another session which looks at things that go wrong, why things don't work out like that, and then we're going to launch into another introductory session, and then we're going to run this course out again, and there's a reason for that. Because when we come to the end of something, when people come to the end of a course like this, it's almost like you come to a fork in the road. And the question that you ask yourself sometimes is this one: what next? What next? What happens at the end of all this? Now, some people go down a fork in the road towards what they could call normality, whatever that is. We hear it a lot in prison when people say, when you ask a question like, what do you want to do with your life? They say, I just want to be normal. I just want to be normal. I just want to blend in. Now, in some cases, that simply means that I want to be able to drink socially, like ordinary people can. It's not fair that I've got a problem with drink and I can't do that. I just desperately want to be normal. It's not fair that I can't be. And some people, when they come to the end of something like this, they say, right, I've finished there. Can I have my little certificate that says, I've done the course, I have recovered, and then I will drift off and become normal. I will say, thank you very much for all the effort that was put in recovery meetings. Thank you, God, for helping me. Thank you, church, for supporting me. But I'm okay now. I'm fine. And I'll make it on my own now. I will become normal. And that's sometimes a dangerous road to take. A dangerous fork in the road to take, that one. It's a little bit like walking along the edge of a cliff, where no matter how long you walk, for how many miles you walk along the edge of a cliff, you're always going to be one step away from a problem. One little step away from something happening that pushes you over the edge. See, there is another road, and that's the road of recovery. Not normality, not forgetting where you've come from. And remember, where we've said you've come from is step one, because that's what happens when people go down the road of normality, what they think is normality. They simply say, I'm okay now, I can do it on my own. We forget steps 10 and 11 that talk about continuation. We carried on doing this stuff. We forget that. But some people go down the road of recovery. And that's good. We'll continue with this. But even then, there can be forks in the road further down that one. When I first came in touch with people in recovery, very early on, I was quite surprised at the way that people talked about recovery, because they made recovery seem like a place. They kept talking about, I'm 5 years in recovery. In the same way you talk about the place that you live in. I've lived in Blackburn for 5 years. I am 5 years in Blackburn. And it made it seem like recovery was some kind of place that you got to. And I wondered about that. And it reminded me, the picture it threw up in me, was this idea of America when it was colonized in the 19th century. The people arrived at the east side, from where you're looking over that side, and then pushed across the continent in the 19th century in their wagon trains. You've seen it on the westerns, heading for California, heading for a better life. But some people got part way across because they knew that it was a tough journey, like recovery is a tough journey. And they knew they were facing deserts and mountains and swamps and native Indians whose land they were crossing who didn't really like them being there. So there were lots of enemies and lots of things that could drag them back. But some people got halfway across or part of the way across and then said, do you know, I'm tired, I'm fed up. This place looks all right. Where I am at the moment looks all right. Let's stop here. Let's stop being pioneers, driving across for a better world, better life. And let's become settlers instead. And that's what they became. They became settlers. They put their roots down. And then they built barricades around themselves, forts to protect themselves, forts like this one, with big stockades to protect themselves against the things that were out there that were going to attack them. And they used the tools that they'd acquired, in this case guns, to protect themselves. And they stayed there. They settled there. And in many ways, that reminds me sometimes of the way that people approach the Christian journey or the recovery journey, because both are the same. I'll stop here. I'll stop in this little I'll put my little barriers up and protect myself against the outside world, the things that might drag me back. Because I know if I don't do these, I'm in trouble. If I don't read my Bible every day, if I don't come to church every week, if I don't do 6 meetings in a week, then I'm going to struggle. And we live behind these little barricades, these little stockades, fearful that something may creep in and drag us back. And the danger is, of course, that what often happens is that something does. Something sneaks in behind our back. We make a mistake. We leave the door of the chicken shed open. And things happen. Because we live this kind of defensive life. Just worried what could come in and drag us back. And we don't need to do that. Nothing wrong, by the way, in going to 6 meetings a week. If that's what works for you, brilliant. Or coming to church every week, who would speak against that? Or reading the Bible or prayer or whatever you do. If it works for you, it's important. But there is something more. That's why this journey doesn't end here. Because a better picture of the recovery journey is really this one. The one we put up as our title screen. Because recovery, like Christianity, is not a place we live in and we're secure in and we're safe in. It's a journey that we're on. And the beauty of it is that we never walk it alone. We walk it with people who support and who help us. And there's no barriers. It's the open road. There's the freedom. Initially, I put a few barriers up when God picked me out of alcoholism 20 years ago. And I didn't go down the alcohol aisles in Tesco for a few weeks after that because I thought, I'm not going to be stupid about this. But it doesn't bother me anymore. It doesn't bother me anymore because that's not going to drag me back into anything. I'm free of that, and I love the freedom. I don't like the fear of thinking that drink could drag me back like some demon. I like the freedom of thinking I know that God has released me from that. My higher power has worked with me. To free me from that. Plenty of other things I've still got to be freed from. Still other things I've got to work, but not that one. Now that's freedom. That's the open road. Recovery is a journey. Christianity is a journey, and we walk it with others, which is why in a couple of weeks we roll this out again, because we're not finished. It's a journey, and we hope that lots of people watching us here, lots of people who've been with us on this journey will join us again when we go back and we look at step one and we work it through, and that you'll bring other people with you. You'll bring other people with you. You'll invite other people. In the meantime, that's it for tonight. I thank you, as I always do. Thank you for listening. God bless you. May you stay safe in the course of this next week. We're going to put up our little screens with the information to contact us and the codes for the Zoom meeting and so on. And it'd be great to hear from you. Great to see you. In the meantime, God bless you. Stay safe, and thank you.
Cast my mind to Calvary, where Jesus bled and died for me. I see his wounds, his hands, his feet, my Savior on that cursed tree. His body bound and drenched in tears, they laid him down in Joseph's tomb, the entrance sealed by heavy stone, Messiah still and all alone. Then on the third, at break of dawn, the Son of Heaven